put ourselves in the position of those in difficulty, so that we may know how to be useful to them, silencing improper or destructive comments. To recognize that our pains and trials are no different from those which visit the hearts of others. To dedicate ourselves to the fulfillment of our obligations. To make every occasion the best opportunity to cooperate for the benefit of others. To improve ourselves through work and study, wherever we are. To cultivate the pleasure of service. To sow love everywhere among friends and enemies. To never doubt the victory of the good. Seeking to be in the position of peacemakers, may we be certain that true peace does not emerge spontaneously. Rather, it is always the fruit of one's effort.
Yes, the light dances.
I can do it. It's easier. I'll do it. Help a little.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let us do our initial prayer, reminding ourselves that it's an exercise for this mindful collective effort. Reminding ourselves that the trick is to connect thought by thought without judging. That's a good practice for non-judgmental attitude. Whether we agree or disagree, we're in, and we don't do our individual petitions, okay? So let us visualize together a beautiful heart of light, radiating love and hope to incarnate this kindness, this light that comes from the Christ. Let us feel ourselves within it, within this heart of loving light. Oh dear Christ, Jesus, you have come in the human form to show us the way, demonstrating that we are called to the best of our abilities yet to be discovered. And in our current world, given so many gadgets and venues of communication, we may find ourselves sometimes lost or overwhelmed, not knowing exactly how to proceed or how to deal with it all. So today, we dedicate these moments of study and reflection to understand a little more of how to do with this part of our lives that is so new to all of us. May we find in these reflections a pathway to moderation, an opportunity to cultivate peace and tranquility so we can nourish ourselves and share this nourishment with others. Thank you for bringing us together, and especially for safely bringing Marcelo Medeiros and Sérgio Santos from New York to the capital of the United States to share in both realms the news, the good news of unity. May we feel your guidance, your protection as you grant us permission to begin this moment of love and light. And so be it. Okay, friends. Marcelo is a friend. Okay. Period. It's not the first time that they are here, Marcelo and Sergio. So they are good friends, and we are very happy that they are in this very same effort with us. And we know that we're talking about an issue that Marcelo knows probably more than any of us, because he lives professionally into this, the news, the media, because he has been working with the broadcasters, the TV especially, the Brazilian TV, Rede TV. He was raised Catholic, but he became a Spiritist in 2005, right?
Yeah.
2005, and he embraced it. He decided to commit to other levels, and he is becoming ever more committed, especially in the Inner Enlightenment Spiritist Society, where Fred Gouveia is, Adilson, Isabella, Patricia, all the friends who came here in December. And we're good friends. Our Spiritist centers turned 10 years almost simultaneously, together with the Mount Vernon Spiritist Center. So we see Marcelo helping all the more also in other venues in the national movement, as much as Sergio. And Sergio also comes here to represent, right, the United States Spiritist Federation and remind us of our upcoming symposium on April 21st, which we can't miss because it's the one, not only, but the one. It's the first one, the first national Spiritist event in this capital, believe it or not. It's hard to believe, 2018, but we made it. We're going to make it. We're going to make it. God wants it. So they are here with us. Later, Sergio can talk to us. But for now, we thought that Marcelo, more than anybody else, could lead us into this understanding on how Spiritism can make us shield ourselves from possible non-healthy spiritual and emotional contagion that comes from the media, which we are exposed all the more nowadays through social media, and how we can actually do the good through it. Right, Marcelo? Lead the way, please. We have our friends from Kardec Radio also joining us, so the world is with you. No pressure.
Hi everyone, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much again, Vanessa, for this invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I was here last year in the beginning of these meetings here in DC, and it's so good to see that every month we have this opportunity of being here in this capital of the country to bring more knowledge of the Spiritism, and especially here, I think Vanessa was telling me about this building where we are now, and about all these media outlets that we have downstairs, and the TV shows that they record here. So, and we are so close to the Capitol's building. So I think talking about this influence of the media and in our lives and how it can be connected to Spiritism, I think it's a wonderful topic for me. As Vanessa said, I've been working as a journalist for more than 15 years now, and I'm a Spiritist since around 2005, 2006. So, and even though I've been doing both, I never really stopped to think about how the two of them, journalism and Spiritism, can like how can we put them together and how we can use the Spiritism with the media to better our lives and to try to change at least a little bit ourselves and the ones around us. So I think that's what I brought here. I'm going to talk about the media and specifically some topics about journalism. That's what I'm more used to do in my daily lives. So let's first, I'd like to bring a little bit about the media in the past. So in the past, when we think about the mass media, one of the first topics that we had was at the time of Rome, like with Julius Caesar. He was the one who brought the first mass media, we could say like that, because he used to have in some ways of communication, like not a newspaper as we know today, but you could print some news about the Roman emperor and to put it in public spaces to people to read and to bring the news from the government. So it was like one of the first mass media that we have in the recent world. And as our topic is the influence that the media has in our lives, when we think about that, if we think that the government is doing the news and is publishing the news, of course we can think about those news that are going to talk some good things about the government. So the first point is that what is that influence? They are already trying to influence the population because we only bring some news that they want people to receive. So if you think like more than 2,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, we already had people using the media to influence us in our lives. And a little more recent, this one is here in the US. We have this newspaper, the New England Courant. This newspaper was in New England, in the Massachusetts, Boston area, and it was published by the brother of Benjamin Franklin. So it was one of the first newspapers that we had here, printed here in the US. Before that, we used to have only newspapers here that were printed in England, and they came here. And what's the change that it brought by having a newspaper that was published here in the US? Because it helped, for example, through the independence of the US, because they could like spread some news that they wanted here about the people who were living here, not the ones that were coming from England. So it also helped a lot during this process of independence here in the US to have a newspaper that was published here by the Americans. And now more recently we have the radio. I'm showing just for us to have an idea how we have today all the media, how it's easy for us to have access to the media today, but it wasn't like that in the past. So more recently, in the 1920s, we have the radio that it became popular after the World War I. So we have this one was still today is very used, very common for us. And after that, we have in the 1941 the TV, the first transmission here in the US, in New York, of the TV. And so this is just for us to have an idea how it's been developed, the media here that we see us today. But what we have today, what has changed? Today we have the internet, and today we have our cell phones, and we have also all the social media. So the main change that we can see is that in the past we needed to go to a place, for example in Rome we needed to go to a public place to read the newspaper, or we need to buy the newspaper to have access to the news, or we need to turn on the radio, the TV, and to search for our TV station. But today we can only, like I wake up, I get my cell phone and I have many news alerts there. I open the Facebook, I open Twitter, and I have many people talking about what's happening in the world. I have access to videos, I have access to so many things, it's easier for us to be on the other side. For example, I can do a Facebook Live more easier. In the past, we needed a truck and heavy equipment to a satellite to go live, and today only with my cell phone is very easy. So at the same time that it's easier for us to have access to what's happening around us, is also easier for us to be the ones who are sending those information to all over the world, not only here locally, but imagine anyone everywhere in the world can be watching us right now through Kardec Radio on Facebook. So it's very powerful. And with all of that, we need to be aware that we, at the same time, we can influence others and we can receive the influence from others. And with that, one of the things that we've been talking a lot, especially since the elections in 2016, is about the fake news and the real news. And so I brought these two news that we find on the web. It's from 2016. We have this football player who refused to stand while they were playing the national anthem. So we have these two websites that they wrote a story about President Obama's reaction with that football player. And I wanted just to see those headlines and what do you think about these two headlines and about these two stories? Which one do you think is real? Which one do you think is fake? And why would you say that? One of them is real, the other is fake.
It's obvious which one's fake. One on the left.
Yeah. On the left? Yeah. But if you see, like, one is CNN, the other is ABC News, so those are some newscasts that we are very known here, we respect a lot. But if we analyze, the ABC News is not the ABC News, actually the real one. So it was a website, it was someone pretending to be ABC News. So they used the name, so they changed the logo, and go, yeah. And so you see, it's very easy for us to receive some of those news and to believe in that, because we know ABC News, and we think, okay, it's real, and it's very fast for us to like to share and to read and to believe in that, and at the same time that if we read that headline and we don't read all the story, don't go after, don't look for more information, we can, okay, be having some thoughts about that, about the Obama's reaction, even though it wasn't real. But we are already creating in our thoughts, creating in our minds some reactions to fake news and believing in that. And that's what happened during the elections. Here we can see, like in the beginning of the year, in February and April, we have the blue line is the number of real news that were shared on Facebook and Twitter. And the green light was the number of fake news. You can see in the beginning of the year, like we had more real news on social media than fake news. But in the end of the year, like around the election day, it changed. So you can see how they use that to, I'm not talking about who used and what side, from where those news they came, but what's important for us to see, how we had fake news on the media, on social media, and how it can affect us. Because
when you say top 20 performing stories, does that mean those are the ones that were put out there, not necessarily how they were, how many people consumed it?
Yeah, the 12 most stories on Facebook, on Twitter, the most shared ones, and this is how people, the number of people who open and who share those stories. Yeah. Wow. So only about the 20 top stories. Wow. Yeah.
The number of people that actually looked at those.
Yeah, they looked at those stories. And this week we have, last week we had another study by MIT showing that it's the fake news, they spread so much faster than the real news. And it's incredible how they said that it took the truth about 6 times as long as Facebook to reach 1,500 people. And they examined more than 100,000 stories on Twitter, and they could see that it's so much faster to spread fake news than to spread real news.
What's the scale on the left side? You know? The 3250.
Yeah, let me see here. It is
Looks like it.
30.
Yeah, it's
Not
30.
really, 1,000.
It's 3250.
Yeah, I know.
No, but what's the scale?
What is
They
the
scale. Wow.
Oh, it jumps up on the
Yeah,
top.
I just want
Yeah.
The first 3 are that way, but then it jumps
It's
up to the top.
interesting.
Yeah. Wow,
Probably
I
compressor.
should check it and bring to you because I don't have I have the source, I have all the research, but I don't have it here right now, but I can bring after for first to see. Yeah, it was on the BuzzFeed, they did that research, but I can bring that after. And so relating the fake news and the spiritism, because many times I think, okay, fake news, something new, something that's happening now, but what? Can we do any relationship with spiritism? Did Kardec have that? And yes, he had, because one of the chapter of the Medium's book, Kardec talked about the apocryphal communications. That are those communications that he received at the time that were signed by high elevated spirits, but they weren't written by or sent by those spirits. So it's very interesting because in this chapter of the book, Kardec brings some communications and he makes us read the communication and to think about is it real or not? Is it like 2 of those communications were signed by Jesus? And and he says that it's very easy for us spiritists to receive some communications, and the spirit can sign whatever name he wants. And how are we going to really believe it is from that spirit or not? How can we know? Because many times the medium is psychographing, the medium is not seeing actually the spirit who is giving the message, and even if the medium is seeing, we know that spirits, they can deceive us, they can pretend to be who they aren't. So Kardec says that so sometimes there are communications that are so absurd, although signed by highly respectable names, that most ordinary common sense exposes their falsity. In others, the error, disguised by being mixed with correct principles, can mislead and prevent its detection at first sight. And also Erastus, he says that it's better to reject 10 truths than to accept one single lie. And so one of the ways, for example, as we saw that news story that had the ABC News logo, it wasn't ABC News, as the communications that he received signed by Jesus. It wasn't Jesus. How can we know that? He analyzed, because there were some words and some messages that obviously Jesus wouldn't bring that to us. So it's very important, Kardec says, for us to analyze all the communications that we receive from the spirit world. And we can bring that to our world here, the physical one. It's very important for us also to analyze all the movies that we are watching, all the books that we are reading, all the news that we are seeing, because to know it is good or not. Let's not believe and buy all the information that we receive every day. And now I brought another example from the earthquake that we had in Mexico last year. So we had here some information, some other headlines, and those headlines, they were actually from the New York Post, from CNN, and we have it not only here but all over the world. We had this campaign, Frida Sofia, and we are all with you. Because what happened at the time? We had this earthquake in the end of the year, last year, and over 300 people died in the earthquake. And during the rescue work, one director of a school in Mexico City, he said that there was a girl, the Frida Sofia, who was there in the building, and he was still alive, and someone listened to heard the girl like crying, and so they mobilized many workers to try to rescue that girl. And all around the world, all the media outlets there, they were just like showing 24/7 that rescue work. So we had many people helping there, many people praying for this girl around the world. I remember that in the day I called my mother in Brazil, and she was watching that, and she said, do you see what's happening in Mexico? Because there's a girl here, poor little girl, what can we do? She's there, she's suffering, and I could feel the anxiety that my mom was feeling by watching that and by waiting to see if the girl would survive or not. So if we imagine one use how they can change our emotions as we are talking about this influence, about this contagious that it brings to us. So many people around the world, they were very worried about that. They were suffering with the suffering of this girl's parents, imagining the girl's parents suffering. And the next day, what happened? We get to know that that girl didn't exist. So someone, they don't know yet how it started, who said that. They said it was one of the director of the school said he never said that. So we don't know how it started, but the fact is that there wasn't a girl in that building. And so we imagine not only the efforts of the people who stopped what they were doing to try to rescue a girl, but if we imagine all this emotion, all these thoughts that were created with that news, people around the world suffering and being anxious about having an answer to what was happening. So you can see how one single news, one single fake news can, in this case a fake news, it could touch so many people around the world, and it could like create this wave of people suffering and people. At the same time, there were many people praying to that girl, but at the same time, we know that were people praying, but at the same time, there were people suffering, there were people like trying to help. So it touches and it moves so many people around us. Only a single news, and in this case, a fake news.
If you flip back to that,
The other one?
yeah, the one before that, and down in the, I guess it was on the left side.
The Twitter.
Yeah,
Well,
where it said that it was really interesting that nobody showed up, no parent or no relative showed up to identify her in this story. It was like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because there's a girl missing, but nobody knows the girl. The parents weren't there. Actually the students, nobody said about her. So yeah, it was just someone said there was a girl and gave the name to the girl. But as you mentioned, nobody knew the parents. Nobody knew the other
Doesn't make
students.
sense at all.
Yeah. And so what can we say about those kinds of news? We have something, I don't know if you have already heard about that, the yellow journalism, about this. This is the name of, this name was brought up during the 1890s, beginning of the 1900s, because there was like a war in New York of the two main newspapers. The two of them, they had this comic. It is called The Yellow Boy. And as the two of them, they published the Yellow Boy, they started to call those two newspapers the Yellow Journalism. And as there was a kind of war between there, they were trying to sell more paper to get more money because it's all about money. Unfortunately, in the world that we live. And so what did they start to do? They start to do some sensationalism, or actually manufacturing some stories, like write fake news, and or even if we had real news, they were like selling that with some headlines to try to call the attention and to sell more paper. So that's what they started to use this term, the yellow journalism, and they use also to say that if it bleeds, it leads. That's something that in Brazil, when I was studying journalism, we used to call those newspapers. That was a very famous one in Brazil, that we used to say that if we squeeze the newspaper, that would be blood as well. We could see the blood, because that's what they used to do. Today we don't have as much as we had in the past. It's good that we are not having so many of them anymore, but we still have some newspaper that we can see through the headlines. They try to sell to us to call attention with this sensationalism. And
I take it that worked. That increased the circulation of the two papers.
yeah. And so I brought here also two more recent stories that we can see that we don't have as many as we used to have, but we still have it. They are from 2014, when we had the Ebola in Africa, and there was this, people were scared that the Ebola could come here to the US, and so one newspaper, one magazine, the cover was this one, Ebola is coming, with all this blood, and the other one is Ebola scare in city. This one here, the second one, it was when there was a man who was in the hospital in New York. They may or may not be with Ebola, so we didn't have that fact. We didn't know, the doctors still didn't know if he was infected with the virus, but the newspaper was already like putting these headlines. So what do you think that those headlines can bring to us? If I wake up, I go to the... how would you feel here? Scared. Yeah, and imagine all the population in the country waking up one day and seeing like Ebola is coming. It's like, okay, I won't go out, I won't do anything of my life. What can I do? It's very. It brings this anxiety to us. It's scare. But do you think that we have something in the background? I mean, something connected in this spirit world? Yeah. Are the spirits also working with those fake news, the journalism and journalists and all these people who help with the media? Yes, they do, and they do it a lot. And here we have this example in the book, In the Domains of Mediumship, by the spirit Andrea Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier. And this is the story, one of the stories that he brought to us. We have a crime, and we have a woman, a journalist, and an obsessor. This woman is somehow connected to the crime. She is not the one who committed the crime, but she is involved. Andrea Luiz doesn't explain exactly how is this connection or what she did with the people connected to the crime, but he only says that she's involved to the crime, but she's not the one who committed the crime. So maybe he knows the person, he is connected to one of those persons. And we have this obsessor. This person is the obsessor of the woman. He is an enemy from a previous life, and he wants the woman to suffer. He wants the woman like to be part of a scandal here in the society. And we have a journalist. This journalist is covering that crime. So he's writing a story of what has happened. And so Andrea Lewis and the assistant Aldous, they go to a place, is a kind of a bar, a restaurant, a bar, and they find the journalist writing the story in that place. So you can see, they see that there's a lot of alcohol, smoking in the place, and they also see that the obsessor is connected to the journalist. If you think, he's not the obsessor of the journalist, he's not connected to the journalist, but he sees that the journalist is writing a story about that woman, and he wants to revenge against the woman. So what does he do? He goes there and tries to influence the journalist, and he succeeds in doing that because he makes the journalist write a story showing that the woman is like really connected to the crime, like the woman was one of the criminals, and Andrea Lewis says that they can see how connected the journalist and the obsessor they are, and he says it's like as if the journalist is a medium, if he is psychographing the story without knowing that. So because the thought of the two of them, they are so connected that he's writing a story, so soon he will be publishing a story that will change that woman's life without realizing that. So this is just one example for us to see what maybe happened in the backgrounds of many of the stories that we watch, many of the, as well, many times movies that we watch, books that we read. We have those spirits that are trying to influence us, maybe because of one of the persons who is involved, maybe trying to influence a group of people, but we need to be aware that we have those spirits around us. And so here the words of Andrea Lewis, he says that the entity completely controls the journalist's expressive thought selves. He's attached to his imagination and ideas, ascending to his occult will through magnetic induction.
Wow.
And then he says, where thoughts exist, mental currents exist. Where there are mental currents, associations exist, and all associations are interdependent and influence each other. So we can think about, as we saw the radio station, we saw the TV station, our thoughts are like that. We are producing thoughts, and we are sending those waves because our thoughts are waves. And as the same way that we can tune to a station on the radio, we can tune to some thoughts that we have around us. So that journalist, he could be connecting to any kind of thoughts or ideas, but he was connected to the same wave as the obsessor because he was in a place like it wasn't a very elevated place for him to be, to write, to do his job. He was having some vices, as we saw, the alcohol, the smoking. So the waves that he was producing was the same waves that the obsessor was producing. So that's how he connected to the obsessor. So it doesn't mean it is not like he was a friend of that obsessor, but the obsessor saw in him an opportunity for him to reach his goal. And so in the Spirits book, we have the question 459 that Kardec asked, do spirits influence our thoughts and actions? And the answer is, they often direct both. Their influence is greater than you think, for very frequently it is they who guide you. And so the other question is, how can we determine whether a suggested thought comes from a good or a bad spirit? Thoroughly scrutinize its quality. So the same advice that Kardec was bringing to us when we were analyzing the communications that we received, the same advice that we can use to analyze the media that we consume in our daily lives, we can use to analyze the thoughts that we have in our minds. Because many times we are going through a situation and we have that negative thoughts, and we need to stop and just think, okay, but is this idea coming from me or not? Or if it is from me, many times I may be the one having that idea, but if I keep having that, am I going to be able to connect better ideas or not? Because if we don't change our thoughts, if we don't change our waves, we are going to connect to receive the same wave that we are sending. For example, if I like one kind of music, if I like classical music, for example, I'm going to turn on the radio to listen to that music. If I want to listen to another kind of music, I need to try to change and to be used to listening to another one. So slowly I can do that change if that's what I want. So the same happens with our thoughts and our ideas. Depending on the way we're thinking, depending to the ideas that we have, we are going to connect and to receive the same ideas, the same thoughts that we are sending. And it's Joana de Angelis also compares the thoughts to the waves on the sea, on the oceans. So we can also think a little bit about that, the waves that we have. We are immersed in our oceans and we have those waves coming all around us and we are connected to them. And just another example that I wanted to bring now, coming to social media, because we saw that story that were coming from the news, from the yellow journalists, but many times we're the one who may be creating that. So 2 weeks ago I opened my Facebook, the Facebook feed, and I saw one friend of mine was sharing some news about a person who committed a crime in the city, and she was sharing that, but not only did she share that news, but she wrote like, this person is a monster. And we study in mediumship as well that we have, for example, one thing that's called lycanthropy. Lycanthropy is when the person, we have a spirit that looks like and think he's an animal. For example, we have a spirit that thinks he's a wolf, and he will have in the spirit realm the appearance of a wolf or any other kind of animal. Ernesto Bosano, who was a spiritist in Italy, he wrote a very excellent book about that topic, and he even talks about the werewolves, and he says that some of them that he studied were like examples of lycanthropy. Like he could see some people that they had, they're like, I have my appearance, but when I go to sleep, when I detach from my physical body during sleep, I have this appearance of a monster. So if we just saw that all the thoughts that we send, all the ideas that we send, we are reaching the others, imagine if many people are reading that news and sending that idea that that person is a monster. Yeah. So that person will be receiving that idea, will not be helping that person to change, because we will just be reinforcing that, and who knows if that person can really receive those ideas and really start to think that he is a monster and start to change his way, to change his spirit, to change his the way he is. So we never know how we are doing that, because our thoughts we are creating. We create the world around us with our thoughts, and by sending that thoughts to a person that is suffering, because if someone committed a crime, you know that the person is not in his best shape, you know that person needs help. So we are the one who can change that, can help that. And one of the ways that we can both help or not is through the comments that we do on social media. Because imagine how many people read that, how many people we will reinforce that idea. We will be sending that idea to a person that they don't know, like one person, they have no idea about the past, the story of that person, and they will just be reinforcing that and sending those waves, and that person will be receiving that. So as we have here, that through the thoughts we communicate with spirits, so they perceive our ideas and desires and respond to us. So not only through discarnate spirits, but also through incarnate spirits as well. And so we talked a little bit about the written word, and now I'd like to bring a little bit about the spoken word, because in the book Spiritist and Art, it's a very beautiful book by Leon Denis, and he talks about how Spiritism and art, they are connected, and he talks about music, architecture, painting, sculpture, but he also says about the literature and about the spoken word, about the speakers, the public speakers. And he says that it is a kind of art. According to his point of view, it is a kind of art. And the way that he explains that that the art is something that we should use to be connected to God, that we are immersed in this world and we can connect ourselves to the high elevated spirits. And he explains that he says that literature and oratory are also types of art, powerful ways of making the thought shine in our world. As this is a Greek philosopher. Yeah. He said that you say that about the tongue. It is according to what you do with it, the best or the worst. So we're the one that he talks about this. Like today, it's so easy for us to use the spoken word, to go live, to have a YouTube channel, to have a Facebook Live. So we can use it. We can use it for the best, or we can use it for the worst.
Is that book translated?
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. I think it's the book from Leon Denis already translated.
It's about to be released.
Yeah, about to be released. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's an amazing book. Yeah.
But I've seen it in Portuguese.
Yeah. And so it is up to us to see how would you like to use that. Would you like to use it to do good? Would you like to use it to do bad? And thinking about art, there's another interesting situation in the book, Sex and Obsession by by Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, by Edvaldo Franco, and he's explaining about one part of the book. He's talking about the story of a priest who is connected to sexual desires because of his past, and when he sleeps, one obsessor, like one of his enemies from the past, he bring him to a place where there are many sexual situations happening. And one of the explanations that they give to us, they say that it's like a city that we have in the spirit world. So many people who are connected to sexual issues, they are brought to that place. And he says that many people are brought there also to be influenced to the carnivals in Brazil. So they go there and they come back to the physical world, and they just replicate what they saw during Carnival that we have in São Paulo, in Rio. So, and they have no idea that they are being influenced by what happens during their sleep. So, and it's something so beautiful that they could be using art to do something good. They are using art to just replicate what is happening in those places. So here, from the book, the same book, In the Domain of Mediumship, it explains why do we have that, why we, for example, during sleep, we can go to do something with some spirits or to other spirits, because we have this law of attraction, that we attract spirits that have affinity with us and to which we are also attached. So they explain that the mental world is like a mirror, that we reflect the images around us and we direct toward others the images that we create. So it's a thing that we are feeding others and the others are feeding us. So for one wholly thinks of anguish and crime, could one reflect in the mirror of one's own soul other images that of disharmony and suffering? Yeah. And so if we think about, for example, going back to that example of the earthquake, if the person is just thinking about that, about what happened with anguish, not like elevating the thought and sending good vibrations and praying, but if I'm just suffering, imagine I'm just attracting those spirits that are suffering as well. So when I may, from out of the blue, become sad without knowing that, okay, but I wasn't sad. There's nothing happening in my life for me to be sad, but I'm feeling that sadness, and we have no idea why. Because sometimes we are just like receiving those images, receiving those information, and just keeping those informations in our minds that we are actually attracting those spirits connected to those issues. So now talking about some violent games that is also very connected to that. I brought this research from the American Psychological Association, and they say that more than 90% of children in the US, they play violent games.
Video games are violent.
Video games, no, I'm sorry, video games. Video games. And from those 90% that play video games, 85% they play some games that have any kind of violence. So you can imagine how many kids that we are talking about here.
85% of those games have some violence.
Yeah. And they say that the results from the research shows that more than 400 studies revealed a significant link between being exposed to violent game in general and aggressive behavior, aggressive thoughts, and angry feelings. So let's go. I'm sorry. So let's just go back to that. We just read about those connections that we make and the friends that we have. Because the same time, if I like classical music, just one example, if I like classical music, I will be around people who also like classical music. I will listen to classical music. I go to concerts, do some things like that. But if I like, for example, violent games, that kid will be around some other kids that like violent games. They can talk about the games. They can see where they are. They can play together. So it's normal in life that we are connected to people that we have the same affinity to us. Like we saw the law of attraction, the law of affinity. And what we may have behind that, what we may have behind those violent games, as we saw, those people who were attracted to some sexual behavior during their sleep, they were brought to places where they continue doing those behaviors that they were doing here in the physical world. So if you imagine those kids, they like playing the games, they play the games many times until late at night before going to sleep. So they go to sleep, they will dream about probably the games. And when you think about the dreams through a Spiritist view, we can say that many times the dreams can be just our mind or our physical mind, just issues from our daily world. So the kid may dream about the game he just played. That's okay, it's still vivid in his mind or her mind. But many times the dreams can be some things that we do while we are sleeping, because
and the reason why it may be so hard for them to stop is because they're not alone, either physically or spiritually. They have friends in the incarnate realm that push them to play, and they have friends in the spiritual realm that are also addicted. So one addicted mind feeds into the other addicted mind, so it's 10 times harder to stop.
yeah,
It consumes their life.
yeah, it is, because we are never alone.
Yeah.
We always have some friends around us, and who are those friends? People that have this same affinity that we have. So if I have a friend here that I'm not seeing that wants me to play more, will be talking to me, will be like trying to convince me to play just one more half an hour, 1 more hour, And we will have that. So we have those spirits around us that they want us to keep having the same behaviors that we have because we feed them. So we have those spirits that like violence. By having someone who is thinking about violence, they receive that energy that they want. And one more information that we can bring from the Spirit's book, the question 261. They say, in the course of trials to which it must be subjected to reach perfection, does the Spirit have to experience every sort of temptation? And they say, of course not. However, when they travel down the wrong road, they expose themselves to all the dangers of that road. So I brought this question for us to think about, because when we are talking about temptations, we are talking about those kids that are playing with those games or watching sometimes some violent movies. Does that mean that all those kids, they will be committing crimes using that violence in their daily lives? No, it doesn't. But we never know our past history. We never know all the temptations that we may or may not have, what can trigger them in our lives. So maybe for a kid, he doesn't have a problem with violence because in the past he never had that, or he already overcame any issue that he had or she had in the past. So he or she may play the game, may watch the movie, nothing will happen. But imagine someone who has a history of violence. And we don't know because we see our kids, we have no idea about the past lives, about what he or she was or is trying to overcome in this lifetime. And we expose that kid to some violence. Maybe that will trigger something in the past that will make that kid be a violent kid, be a violent teenager, be a violent adult. So that's what they're saying here. Of course, we don't have to experience all the temptations, but if we go to the wrong road, if we expose ourselves to the dangers, we may be exposed to those temptations, and we never know what is going to be the temptation of that kid, because we don't know their past. The same way we don't know ourselves. We have our tendencies. We may be able to see what tendencies that we have, but many times if I never faced a situation here, and it's the first time I'm facing a kind of situation, I don't know what reaction I will have, because it may trigger something that I have inside of me. The same happens to the kids. So if we think about all those, like 85% of the kids that play video games, violent games, how many of them can be triggered by that? And not only video games, but also we could think about the violent movies, about violent stories that we have, some books, all kinds of violence that we have. So just to summarize, so what do you think that we can do? How can we try to change and to have a good influence of the media, a good influence of not only spiritual and emotional in our lives? What examples could we bring? How can we change that?
We can be selective. We have to analyze the language and the content like Kardec says. We could use the same criteria to analyze social media. Is the message kind, thoughtful? Does it feed the soul? If yes, then share. If not, delete it. Have to be selective. Have to use discernment.
And when you think about social media, it's also important, like to say not to engage in some discussions that we have, because many times we are just feeling like we have someone that doesn't have the same opinion that we have, and we go and write, reply to that post, and by replying, another person will reply, and we see we have like huge texts on Facebook about that, and we are just feeling that animosity. And so it's a way we need to select what we are reading. That's a very good tool on Facebook, for example, is just to unfollow. We don't have to we don't we don't need to delete the friend. We just need to unfollow if the person like is posting things that we don't like. Just unfollow. We don't need to see that in our, because many times just by seeing that it can change the way that our mood. Yeah, so we may have like if I wake up not that good and I just open and read something that I don't like, it will be like worse, and that will just feed my daily mood. So that's one of the things that we have. And the other thing is sharing good news, sharing good videos, sharing around us. I think that it's amazing what Vanessa, for example, what she does. She's a very good example on Cardiac Radio, and every day doing the talks that she does at 11 p.m. So that's a way for us to use the media that we have today to share good news. And another thing that I also like, for example, because as a journalist I have to read so many bad news all the time, but I always try to search for at least one good news every now and then. So I can at least, there are so many good things happening around us, and so I like to see like good research that are showing some what medicine is doing, what science is doing, or some good example of volunteering works, because it's good for us to see, okay, I'm seeing all those bad news happening, coming from everywhere, but at least we have also good things around us. We just need to select and to know where to find it, and also to share it around us. So I think that's it. Thank you so much for your attention. Do you have any questions? Yeah. Sure.
And what can we do? There should be a group in the mass media that check wherever they are fake, they should pay. They should put how many percent is true. Should be a neutralizer.
I thought they had something like that, at least during the election, to see what the measurement of fake news and what was fake.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
Yes,
and I think Facebook's coming out now for you to tag what's fake.
Oh.
Yeah, they are trying to
good
combat
idea.
that by doing something like that. I read that you'll be able to tag what you think is fake.
Oh,
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Because it shows how much Facebook played into the fake news. So I think they're trying to reverse it, but we'll see.
Especially the ABC News. It's supposed to be part of the ABC News to come and rebuttal what was said. This is not ours.
Yeah, but many times many times we have, for example, we have some those fake news, and they are there online, and when we see they are offline, they remove that and then they put again in another website. So there are some of them, they are very fast doing that because they can track. So it can be tracked where it comes from and how it is going around.
It's really interesting. You sort of have a compass, but it's after the fact, because as you were saying earlier, fake news travels so much faster than true news. So if you had a compass that said, "Oh, this one got around the world in 5 hours," you know that was fake news. Because we, as you know, you didn't mention it, but we're the ones that are really at fault for all this, because we gravitate towards this, crap, and we spread it.
Yeah.
To strengthen the emotional response to
Yes.
fake news too. We have a neighbor that I talked to during the election, and the neighbor started something about Hillary Clinton that wasn't true, but she just got so viciously angry. You know, and you could just tell how affected she was emotionally. And I don't think that true news will affect you to the same extent, because it's going to be a little bit more measured, right? A little bit more, little tiny bit more. I mean, every once in a while there's a news story that just really impacts you, but I mean, not at that extent, like vicious, like, oh, you know, did you see what she was doing to those children, you know, or something like this, you know. Like, it's totally untrue, you know, but she was just so angry about it, you know. I thought, this is strange. And it was before a lot of the fake news things started coming out, and I just remember being affected by it, thinking, this is really odd. She's,
What they want is a reason not to vote for it.
well, yeah, of course.
And so you're gonna gravitate towards something that'll validate.
Of course. And you'll react with your emotions rather than with your
Yeah, many times it happens to me, like some friends come to me and say, did you see, and say some very absurd story, and I say, okay, but where did you read that? I don't remember, but it is like a good source or not, because, and we have this kind of gossip, because we may read something on the news, and many times we don't read the news, we just see the headlines.
Yeah.
And I read the headline, and then I'm telling about that news just from the headlines, and you're telling to another one, and when you see, it's like a gossiping. We are spreading it around, like talking to each other. So many times when people come to me, okay, but where did you read that? Let's open Google, let's see if we can really find that if it's true or not, because otherwise we just like be gossiping around.
Marcelo, I have a question.
Sure.
In your profession, have you experienced the case that Andrade showed about the crime and the journalist being influenced? Have you felt like something? I know you're a spiritist, so it's easier for you to say, oh, maybe to discern. But before or even during this time that you're so engaged in spiritism, have you observed like this external influence pushing you, tempting you to, to report in a more bloody way?
As in bloody way, I don't think I was. Yeah, no, I don't think I was tempted because I never liked this kind of sensationalism, or I never liked to cover crime or police things. But I've seen some friends that they have. Like I knew I worked with one person that he used to make up some stories, and he wasn't afraid of saying that. Because once we were covering the same story, and he just went live and he gave some information, and then I said, okay, that I didn't know that. Where did you find that information? He said, nobody tell me. I'm just saying because I need to say something, and I just made it up. Like when we see some people, like someone talk off the record, I can say the source, but the person said this or that, and he used to do that very often. Yeah, but yeah, because they want to to gain visibility and but it's.
I just want to remind one case in Brazil that scares me really. Like the lady in Guarujá.
Yes, I live in Guarujá, and the people was talking about the lady, saying the lady was pick up kids and doing bad things, but it's not real, and the people, I don't know say this in English, but the people,
They killed her?
Yeah,
It is
was on the website.
Yes.
Like was
Yes.
you know how called retrato falado?
They lynched.
Yes, and
lynched.
she died, and it's
She died.
well,
It
she
showed
died,
that
and
woman
yes.
in Afghanistan. She entered the mosque, and then she was seeing the commerce, like the marketing side, and she was denouncing the abuse. And you can't do this, and this guy was so furious. He created a slander that led to her lynching, which became like street lynching, to the point that after she was dead, a car came over because the fake news came. The guy created the following slander, just like at Jesus' time. She, in her case, it was more like telling that she was heretic to the Quran, that she said bad things about the Quran. He created that out of the blue inside of the mosque. He then went outside, they started lynching her, and then the whole street.
Yeah, but while I was doing the research for the lecture, one story came to my mind. Is a very famous story in Brazil. Is an example that we journalists we learn how not to act, what we should not do, because it was a story. I think it was from the 1980s, 1990s. It was a school in São Paulo, a escola base, where the kid, one kid said he was being abused by a teacher or a director, and then the parents started to do like a scandal and to bring that up, and then the other kids said something, and the school was closed. They were like there was a lawsuit on the owners of the school, but they ended up finding that the first kid was never abused when they, like the psychologists and the doctors, and then the parents also actually said in the end that that abuse never happened. And
we had the same thing happen in the United States with the McMaster preschool. It happened in the 80, maybe John was 1980, something like that. Remember McMaster preschool?
No.
And same story.
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah,
same
story.
Same time.
Yeah, around the same time.
They were real little kids, and they were
Real little kids.
They were leading them more than anything else.
It brought it also brought into psychology a lot of ethics about how to report, how to, when you're dealing with small children about issues like this, how are you supposed to talk to them? How do you corroborate what you know versus what you want to say, and how do you approach abuse with children? Because
those people were totally ruined.
Their lives were ruined,
Yeah.
and it was all fake.
So if we see that example in the background, if you think about the spirit realm, how the influence they should be doing to the kids, to the journalists, to everyone around, just to maybe to do something against the owners of the school. So now that I have that time I didn't have the information, but now that I have the information, it's important for us to analyze what may be happening in any story that we see.
No, the ultimate question. There is a good news networking now. We know it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Now there's CNN here, so more and more the good has a spot in the news. But since you are in this professionally, how do you see it? It's still not very much. It doesn't catch too much of attention.
No, it doesn't. Not too much,
Right?
Yeah, but what I like, for example, is at CNN, I like to watch the morning show that they have. It's from 6 to 9 a.m. And usually the last segment of the show is the good stuff. So it's good because after like 2 hours or 3 hours reading and receiving those news, the bad news of here in the US and around the world, the last one is the good stuff. Like, okay, so at least we have like 1 minute watching some good example that is happening at the CNN heroes. But many other networks, for example, we have a local network in New York, the New York one, they have a segment like the New York of the week. So every week they tell a story of a good example that someone is doing. But I hope in the future we have more and more. Yeah, it's good. We are going there. Yeah, getting there.
Thank you, Marcelo, for sharing the good news. Okay, so what can we do to never forget what Marcelo told us, okay? Andrea Luiz says, the mind needs to focus on mental inductors. Remember when he says mental inductors? He talks about it in the book Mechanisms of Mediumship, which is not yet in English. So keep it in the to-do list, in the dream list, okay? And let's in the prayer list. But mental inductors, he says, we can never forget, as Marcelo was saying, we see something and we feel something. So, a book, Andrea Luiz says, a word, as Marcelo was telling us, the spoken word is very powerful. The written word. The good spirits have said that even the written word, the good written word, is ever more powerful because it lasts. It stays with humanity. And if we talk and the conversation is a good conversation, an image, Andrea Luiz says that anything, a sound, like music, Marcelo was saying, become mental inductors. So this thing that people say, but I'm just watching, doesn't exist. According to the laws of the mental field, the just watching is doing something. It doesn't exist. The neutrality. There is no neutral position. He says that through these mental inductors, we're going to either connect with the constructive, okay, the teachers, mental currents, and or the destructive. There is no neutrality, like we say, but I'm just talking, but I'm just saying, but I'm just reading, but I'm just looking. Like, when you're dating and you're young, and people are looking around, and but I'm just looking, it's nothing. It doesn't exist, my friend. Nothing doesn't exist. There is no nothing. Nothing doesn't exist. It's either here or here.
What I've heard is, it's just make-believe. You're watching TV, it's smiling. It's just make-believe.
No. I mean, it's here or here. So violence here. And then what does it do? Physiologically, newspapers already show that it changes our immune system response. It boosts, especially if we want to focus on one thing physically, is the autonomic system. What Marcelo is telling us are things that are going to affect us not mentally, spiritually, but physically. For those who only believe in the physical, there's enough science to tell us that these things will affect us. So if we keep listening, watching, talking, reading, seeing, looking at things that are not constructive, they are triggering in our physical body what we call the sympathetic. The sympathetic system in us is going to trigger the stress response. Because those things, the stimulus that we're seeing or listening, they become almost like a threat to our survival. And once they are decoded as a threat, the physical body, the brain believes what we're saying, and it prepares to respond, the alert. It's good once, but if we're constantly under that, there are people who turn on the TV and stay on the whole day, right? On and on, and it happen. Just for company, Vanessa, because I'm alone, or put something else.
When did breaking news become a news alert? I've always thought that was funny. Now everything's an alert or a crisis.
And then it's like triggering your system saying, careful, careful. So you are, no wonder people are having a lot of anxiety, triggered by chronic stress, depression as well, because it's always on the go. We're always like, I must do something. If I'm tranquil, I feel wrong, because I have to be somewhat doing something on the go, always, all the time. So it's our choice, as Marcelo is doing. What can we do? We can choose. And we can do it. I can choose. Choose. I can use, and that's why Spiritism is here, the light of discernment. As Humberto de Campos reveals to us in another book, Among Brothers of Other Lands, Spiritism comes to bring us the light of discernment. And it tells you, you can choose, you have free will. You're not doomed to what others are offering. Because children like this, You expose them to something. Oh, okay. If they do it, it's right. It's not. I'm going to tell you, you can choose. Everybody can be crying, but you can make a choice. I don't want to cry. And you can train, coach yourself to it. So the Spiritist program is a coaching system. So we can, as Marcelo pointed out to us, choose to be here. News are important, right, Marcelo? We need to report things that are off. We cannot be like pretending, right, Marcelo? That's the critical, the fine line of reporting something that is critical and saying we have to be on the alert because country X is threatening country Y. What can we say? It's sad. And the other thing is to augment the story, magnify it, and even worsen it. And that's what we've been seeing. Right? So for us, the maturity to know the fine line of knowing the news, but cultivating the constructiveness of it. And we can do it by observing the stimulus. We are conditioned by them. Visual, auditory, all the senses, including the spiritual sense. We need to shield ourselves because we are set up to be contaminated because we're social beings. But Marcelo, believe it or not, he lives within this. He seems to be quite composed, right? It's unbelievable. Quite an unusual reporter, very grounded, right, Sergio?
Definitely.
It's unbelievable, and lives in this world. In the very world, for us, it's just at a distance for him. It's like his daily bread. Congratulations. Appreciate it. Yes.
I have a comment. It's not so much related to social media. I guess a question, but we have control in our Facebook, right? In ours, what we see. But how about people around us? Because it's so hard nowadays not to get contaminated in a way, like, because people are being negative or people are making comments that are not right, or like how you shield yourself from that. I get that's what is hard.
Yeah. How you shield yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying, right? But it's so hard.
I think only the guided model Jesus would give us a good direction. Because think about his time. One of, not the first fake news of all times, because certainly it came since ancient times. But Jesus' time, thanks to Chico Xavier and Humberto de Campos, we got to know that historically, the fake news of the adulterous woman was fake. She was not an adulterer at all. It was created. Why? And then there is a story why. What was his attitude? Not only then, but to all the fake news and all these the la 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 that everybody knows. Everybody always creating. So I think he's as a guide and model for us. He shows to us, keep sharing the good. Keep being the means through which you're sharing the good news. That's why he called good news. You can make the good news, and thanks to Facebook, and now all the other ones, we can be the good news makers. We can be. And that's how we're counterbalancing. People are posting something we don't know. Like the other day I saw somebody died. It was a Spiritist person who said, "Oh, Maria, how does that person share?" And then I quickly searched, did that person die really? Didn't die. It's like, how do you just share? Like, I'm so sad. First, you're a Spiritist. The that person didn't go away. You should be happy that this person is freer. And then you're sharing fake news. You're not. So what can we do? We can do our part like Jesus. He didn't bother to control. So letting go of the control. What people do is their problem, like the hypocrites in the Jewish temple. He didn't go there and say, hello, but when they came to him, they listened. That's how we do. If they come to us, there is boundary. In our home, our rules. It must be that way. Oh yeah, in our homes, our rules. In our workspace, our rules. But then when we are sharing in a common space, people's rights. And that's what Jesus did. The question of the Spirit's book, right? 875 talks about justice, respecting people's rights. And then Kardec asked, but how so? Well, we respect doing to others what we'd like to do, but knowing the boundaries to the general good. So people can do whatever they like as long as they don't injure others. And that's the fine line. So people can come and do whatever they want as long as they don't inflict pain. So we're not going to change them, but we're going to set up boundaries. Like on Facebook. Mentor Joseph always tells me, when I see something, no, go back. Unfollow Vanessa. Because it's a little bit of junk, like a millisecond of junk, but it's junk that they are doing. This type of person is not going to help. So I'm not going to unfriend, but I'm going to unfollow because it doesn't add to me. So practicing that is pretty new to us, right? I think probably it's the first